Good morning. My name is Nicholas de Monchaux. I am the director of the Berkeley Center for New Media, one of the organizers of today's event. I would open our conversation here today with a couple of reflections. My eye has been caught more than usual these days by a quote at the entrance of the Free Speech Cafe, which is, of course, the closest thing the Berkeley campus has to a holy space, where there is a quote from Mario Savio that says this, that free speech places us just below the angels, which as an architect is fascinating to me, as the public affairs, or res publica, that give name to our own republic, were conventionally not sacred at all in classical times, but reserved literally for the space in front of the temple, the non-sacred space, the profane, which gives us the word profane. Similarly, the modern university, or at least the first modern university outside the Islamic tradition in Bologna, had a profoundly pragmatic origin. It was originally formed as a collection of mutual aid societies, collectively termed universitas, on behalf of the foreign students, immigrants to the city, for protection against collective punishment for the perceived crimes and debts of their countrymen. It is to the resulting right of free passage given to all scholars in Bologna that we owe the roots and even the name of our own cherished academic freedom. Yet we also need to recognize, against this long history, that our own government protection of free speech is, in its own way, fundamentally new. It was, in many ways, the product of a previous explosion in media, of widely available newsprint and photojournalism and radio in the early 20th century. As the legal scholar Tim Wu has pointed out, it was the government both seizing broad control and influence over national media, and even more essentially suppressing political dissent in wartime, that provoked jurists like Brandeis, Hand, and Holmes to advance our current notions of First Amendment rights, law which specifically governs the actions of a public university such as ours to this day. Now, Berkeley's own essential free speech movement took place at the intersection of this era with one more like our own, when students and ultimately faculty rejected the notion that this institution should restrict or suppress political speech on the part of students, an argument that precisely connected the new narrative of free speech in American society with the long-standing tradition of academic freedom. Today, however, we face a stark and urgent confluence of this history and the media condition of our own age. The First Amendment, rendered into its current form to help manage the profuse yet centralized flows of media at the dawn of the last century, and our own tradition of free speech here at Berkeley, grounded in the protests and media of a half-century ago, are being radically challenged by the transformations and disruptions of the media of our time. For what part of speech has not been radically remade in the last decade? Instead of the scarcity and assumed sagacity of speakers 100 years ago, we face instead a marketplace of speech open to all comers. Instead of a citizenry or campus population open to diverse forms of speech upwards and downwards, a ladder of authority, we are inundated with a sideways torrent of tweets, tags, posts, and posturing, often experienced well within the filter of our own online associations. Much has been made in Berkeley's own conversations about free speech in the last year about our campus's special role and responsibility as a public university to protect speech. But we must also ask, as a campus and a society, where in our current structures we offer protections against the most profound new threats to speech, against real and enormous armies of trolls, or fake but insidious armies of bots, scripts, and non-persons acting in today's most well-populated public forums. By some estimate, these number above 100 million on Facebook and Twitter alone. These are not visibly state actors, but they are sometimes explicitly encouraged by state actors, up to and including our president. And all this without mentioning the program of sanctioned and even sponsored disinformation, ambiguation, and devaluation of the legitimacy of speech in our society by state actors, such as other governments, not our own. Taken together, this seismic shift in the structure of information forces a shift in how we must conceive and protect free speech. precisely not because our values or priorities as a society can or should change, but because shifts in media, more than anything else, must force us to profoundly examine and reimagine the how of free speech, precisely to protect the what of it. The event you're all part of today was planned more than a year ago, prior even to the presidential election of 2016. Oh, sorry, yeah, 2016. My memory gets a little fuzzy there. I will say only that I do not actually delight in all the ways that recent events have conspired to make clear the importance of the discussion we are framing today. I would leave you instead with a larger exhortation, which is that we perform here today what this tradition of academic freedom and freedom of speech was designed to protect, an essential coming together for mutual aid, engagement, and understanding. With your presence here today, I'm asking you in particular to agree to this most essential of points and to the way in which it must guide all our behavior to another, whichever our disagreements. In the most pragmatic sense, I would ask in particular that those present respect the structure of the event, the need for taking turns and listening to all voices, and the measures and moments for interactions with each other across all panels. In this spirit of exchange, I'm particularly thankful to our own essential collaborators in this event, the Graduate Assembly and Bridge USA, as well as to the many speakers, faculty, staff, and students who have agreed to speak. And also to one very special staff member, Laura Wolf, who is not a speaker, but without whom none of our speech here would be possible. Finally, I would like to recognize those who felt that they were unable to speak here today for fear of some of the very new, real, and terrifying restrictions on speech I referenced above. As you will see later, we have endeavored to include their voices as well and as an essential part of our conversation. Finally, I would invite you to take your turn in this conversation, not just in the Q&A sessions we have sprinkled throughout the day, but in the form of our closing address, the mirror across the day of the words I speak to you now. These will be assembled from yours. This closing address will be assembled from your speech, all of you here, at least as you choose to speak through Twitter and through the hashtag #ReplyAll with no space. The quality and focus of this closing address will therefore be entirely up to you, and we look forward to it. It is my task now to introduce the university's current chancellor, Carol Christ, who will in turn introduce our first speaker, Robert Reich. It must be said that several of our speakers across the day may disagree with one or other actions taken by the university administration as they seek to balance all that I have said above with the legal, financial, and political constraints on the university in the last year. And so it very much should be. For what we seek to protect is precisely a community that can productively create and creatively disagree, especially on the most important questions. Yet I believe each of us, whatever our beliefs, should be profoundly respectful and grateful to the responsibility, complexity, and scale of the task of leadership of the university through this time. Who of us would readily take it on? It would have been very easy for Chancellor Christ not to take this job at this time. Few would have faulted her after what is already a remarkable career, both at this university and at Smith. It is in this light especially that I would, on my own behalf, but I hope on behalf of all of you as well, express my enormous gratitude to Carol, not just for her presence here today, but for her values-driven and engaged leadership as we seek to create freedom of speech and ideas here together, not just in principle, but in practice, not just in imagination, but in fact. Thank you so much.